Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2022-23 season. My name is Dan and today we're going to do the Game Week 31 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. And today, guys, we have a very controversial avoid, which I'm looking forward to sharing with you and hopefully I can back it up with some reasoning. So, guys, if you do enjoy this one, please do leave a like, please do subscribe if you're new around here. But without further ado, guys, let's have a quick look at the rules of the video. Okay, so buy is a place you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells a place you probably have but should consider removing. Keeps a players that you might be thinking about removing. I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now. I think they are potential traps that maybe you could avoid. Just going to give some reasoning to why maybe they're worth a second thought before kind of buying them, I guess. Let's start off with some buys. Alright, so our first buy is Jack Grealish, our Bubba indeed, and he is a player in very good form right now. In fact, quite surprising how good form he is in, really, compared to some of the other players. And per game played, I know Man City have played slightly fewer games than some of the other teams. Per game played, he is doing absolutely fantastically, really towards the top end of the table, depending on what kind of metrics you use. He's looking like the third best player in the entirety of FPL per game played over the past 5 game weeks. So that is really good. That is really showing us that if we're looking for a midfielder right now, and I know people are waiting on an injury update for Marcus Rashford, or maybe thinking about selling at the likes of James Maddison as well. If you're looking for that new midfielder, Jack Grealish really could be the player that will sort you out, particularly if you are looking to free hit in Game Week 32. And I'm going to try and split this today's video up between kind of options for those of you free hitting in 32 and those of you who aren't free hitting in 32. But those of you who are, Grealish seems like a really obvious pick, kind of a bit of a no-brainer, a bit of a slam dunk kind of transfer for you to make if you are looking for that midfield replacement in kind of the mid-range price kind of player. So yeah, 2 goals, 2 assists in his last 4 games, decent XG and XA, so he's not overperforming by too much, overperforming just a little bit, but not so much that he kind of looks unsustainable. It does look sustainable indeed. He seems to be fairly nailed on that left-hand side at the moment. I know there's no such thing as nailed on when it comes to Man City, so you're always going to be carrying a little bit of risk there. But another thing is that along the left-hand side where Grealish kind of plays, or the right-hand side of Leicester's defence, this is really an opportunity where Leicester have kind of been weaker in those kind of areas. So maybe that's going to be a nice opportunity for Grealish in a home game against a Leicester team that is in a bit of trouble at the moment, obviously with the new manager as well. Not really sure what Leicester's situation is going to be. Could this be an opportunity to exploit it? Absolutely. And then we've got the double game week in 34 coming up as well, so you get to load up on another double game week player for game week 34. Free hitters in 32, I feel like this is a really big opportunity for you to really take advantage of the fact that you are playing a free hit in 32 by going for the players kind of like Jack Grealish. Now, if you are not free hitting in Game Week 32, you are going to need a player who can cover you very nicely for 31 and 32. And then maybe beyond that, you might be looking to remove some of your single Game Week players for some double Game Week players later on, 33, 34, maybe up to 37, where we're going to see another big double as well. So we need a player who's going to do quite well in the short term. And who else but Martinelli, another player who is absolutely smashing it recently in one of the best forms of any player or in the Premier League right now. He really is playing so well. West Ham are a team that previously I probably would have said West Ham, they're not the easiest defense in the world, but recently they've had some really bad results. They really are conceding a lot of chances and a lot of goals recently, and you feel like if you're going to go for one Arsenal player right now, I feel like Martinelli is the man, as long as you feel like Martinelli is nailed on. And I know some people have some concerns about this, but it really doesn't seem like he's going to be dropped from the team anytime soon. He is in too good form. He really is the key player. And what we see when Martinelli plays with Gabriel Jesus is that Gabriel Jesus often comes into kind of a slightly more creative role in many ways, allowing Martinelli to come more central, cut in from that left-hand side, be the furthest man forward on those counter-attacks as well, which is another reason where maybe he's going to be okay in some of the more tricky fixtures as well, if he's able to play that counter-attacking football as well. So there's so many good things about Martinelli right now, and per minute played, I feel like there is no better Arsenal player to own right now, and I think it's, you know, that's the case by some distance. I consider him a better FPL asset than the likes of Saka, Odegaard, Jesus, Trossard, and any of the defenders as well. Martinelli really seems like the guy to go for right now. Again, if you're looking for that mid kind of priced midfield player, pretty cheap actually at 6.6 million, and you're going to get a lot of value for money there. Looking at the numbers as well, looks really good. There's nothing to dislike about Martinelli right now. If you need a player for 31 and 32, this guy is going to be your man in midfield. So yeah, I mentioned earlier that maybe James Maddison could be a player to sell as long as you don't have any other injury problems. And I'm not going to suggest to sell any injured players right now because I feel like, you know, if a player is injured, that's pretty obvious that you're going to sell them. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you want to keep injured players if they're back in a few weeks, if you have long-term plans and strategies for these kind of players. But in terms of the fully fit players that we could still think about selling, I would certainly put Maddison very well up there at 8.2 million midfielder. So that is fairly expensive for a midfielder right now when there are so many great midfield options. And Maddison is just unfortunately not putting up the numbers that we kind of like. In 6 games in the last 5 game weeks, his XG is just 0.86. So we're looking at 1 goal every 7 or 8 games on average there. That's not really good enough for a midfielder. Expected assist is a lot better. And to be fair to Maddison, overall, if you're just looking at goal contributions in general, these are not terrible numbers, but we really do want those goal-scoring midfielders, I feel like, particularly if we're looking for those, you know, real high kind of upside players that are really going to make a big difference in our team. I feel like Maddison is just not kind of that kind of player. So yeah, certainly if you are looking to remove players, you are free hitting in game week 32, maybe that's going to impact your decision a little bit, and maybe you could actually keep Maddison potentially. If you are looking for a player who is going to play in game week 32, you are not free hitting, maybe that is going to edge you towards keeping Maddison, to be fair, because Man City away is great, you know, if you want to sell him, that is. But in Game Week 32, if you really are struggling for players who are actually playing players in 32, then maybe you should keep him. So in general, to be fair, if you are not free hitting, then maybe you actually have to keep Maddison. But if you are free hitting, again, Maddison is going to be the kind of player who you would consider selling if you are going to be free hitting in game week 32, certainly, because, you know, you'll have a bad fixture now. You're not going to, you're not going to be playing Maddison anyway in game week 32, so you don't really get advantage of that good game against Wolves, and the numbers are not great anyway, and certainly you're going to be looking to get more midfielders who double up later down the line. So this is, I guess, one for free hitters. Definitely, you're probably going to look at selling Maddison. If you are not free hitting, maybe selling Maddison is not your priority, but I guess that's kind of up to you. I think I would still consider selling him, certainly, because, you know, he's just 8.2 million. It's just quite expensive, and you can do a lot more with that money, I feel like. So, yeah, in general, I'm going to say Maddison is a sell. Another sell potentially here is Ben Chilwell, and this one I feel like is a one for those of you guys who are free hitting in game week 32. You might think about keeping Chilwell, but if you're not free hitting at all, then you probably would be more likely to sell Chilwell than Maddison, to be fair, because if you're not free hitting in game week 32, then you have a pretty bad fixture run here. So you've got Brighton at home, not a great fixture for Chelsea. You've got no fixture in game week 32, so you're probably going to be thinking about selling some of those blanking players in 32 anyway, if you're not free hitting then. Game week 33, Brentford, Arsenal away in game week 34 as well. So we really are looking at these 4 fixtures. One is a blank. 3 of them, the other ones are, you know, some of the best attacks in the entire league, particularly Brighton and Arsenal. Really, they are right at the top of the kind of list of best attacks in the Premier League right now. So there are going to be goals conceded indeed. 6 million is quite a big price, and the final thing is that the Lampard effect is not a particularly encouraging one for 3 reasons for Ben Chilwell in particular. First of all, we've seen him rested or rotated or, you know, dropped from the team in Lampard's first game in charge, which is very disappointing considering Chilwell's good form. Can't really get my head around that, but that is something that happened in that first game. Second of all, we have got Chelsea moving to a back 4 formation we've seen under Lampard, which again is going to mean that Chilwell is not going to be able to get as far up on the pitch when he is playing. He is going to be playing slightly deeper. Again, another negative thing about Chilwell. And finally, Lampard is known for playing slightly more attacking football, which I guess is more entertaining, but it also does mean that more goals are going to be conceded, particularly against these trickier teams. So yeah, it's really not looking as good as it was for Chilwell, particularly if you just need players for game week 32. Chilwell is probably going to be one of the first players you think about selling, and you're going to be looking for new defensive kind of replacements, I guess. Could consider some Liverpool defenders in this slot if you can afford to go for Trent Alexander-Arnold, for example. Definitely would consider that. But I do kind of like the look of some Crystal Palace defenders at the moment as well, so maybe that's a consideration as well, because they're looking a little bit stronger defensively and they have some amazing fixtures coming up. So maybe Crystal Palace defenders, maybe Liverpool defenders are going to be your Chilwell replacements if you are not free hitting in game week 32. Let's move on to the next section. So our first keep is going to be Bruno Fernandes. So yeah, this is a really interesting one. I know a lot of people are looking to sell him because, I mean, let's be honest, he hasn't got any attacking returns recently. He's got no goals, no assists, but we have seen some slightly good underlying numbers. 0.8 XG, 2.13 XA. That's about similar to Maddison, but with one game less played. So yeah, we're kind of looking at a similar level there, but I feel like the key difference here is because of the kind of missing Casemiro, because of the missing Eriksen, Fernandes has been kind of forced to play a little bit deeper recently, which has impacted his ability to get forward and get attacking contributions. Now, Casemiro is back for Game Week 31, which is a huge plus for Fernandes. Eriksen is very, very close as well. We've seen him make substitute appearances now, so we are going to see Eriksen come back into the team and allow Fernandes to push a little bit further forward as well there. We've got a game against Nottingham Forest, which is a really nice fixture. And one more thing, guys, that I think is really important to mention, and I know I usually say penalty takers, occasionally you're going to get lucky with a penalty, which is very, very nice, and I definitely do maintain that belief. But Nottingham Forest in particular have been known to concede penalties this season. In fact, no team is conceding more penalties this season than Nottingham Forest. I believe they've conceded 8 penalties so far this season. So if any team, you know, if there's any team to target with a penalty taker, it kind of is Nottingham Forest in many ways. And although usually getting a penalty and scoring a penalty is a little bit lucky if you have that penalty taker in your team, if Fernandes was to score a penalty against Nottingham Forest, I feel like I wouldn't put that entirely down to luck, because what you're doing is you're targeting a team who concedes a lot of penalty with a penalty taker, and that just kind of makes sense in many ways. So overall, I think although we have had some kind of negative results from Bruno Fernandes, and I completely understand that, I completely respect that, I feel like there is optimism going forward, and I feel like that is why Fernandes is a keep. I think we need to look less at the points that Fernandes has been scoring and more at the fact that his underlying numbers are pretty good. Despite him playing in a deeper position, he's going to be moving back into a more advanced position, and he's playing against a team who is going to be like conceding penalties hopefully as well. So overall, I think this is a really good keep, and I feel like this is going to be the start of a bit of a turnaround, particularly, guys, if you are free hitting in Game Week 32. I know we have to keep mentioning this because it is a very important factor and it is going to change kind of how you play. But even if you are free hitting in Game Week 30, even if you're not free hitting in Game Week 32, sorry, I still would keep Fernandes for one more game week, and then I would think about selling him in Game Week 32. I would like to keep him ideally and put him on the bench for the game week, but I do kind of understand why you would sell him at 32. But for 31, no matter who you are, I would be keeping Fernandes if you already own him. Alright, Ollie Watkins is our next keep, and I'll keep this brief because I know most people are just going to be like, yeah, Dan, obviously we keep Ollie Watkins. He is absolutely insane. He is an absolute beast. But he is actually one of the most sold players this game week, which is kind of interesting. So I thought I would come on here and say, guys, anyone who's thinking about selling Watkins, don't do it. I don't know who you're selling him for. You know, even if you're selling him for Erling Haaland, I don't even know if I would do that necessarily, because Watkins really has been in ridiculous form. He is the player to own right now. And even though Newcastle at home, you might see that as a slightly difficult fixture, I'll say this a million times. A good forward in good form will score against anyone. It doesn't matter. We see this all the time, that even in the difficult fixtures, when a player is in red hot form, and I don't think there's any forward we can say is in better form right now than Watkins, you have to kind of keep him through these difficult fixtures and watch him continue to score those goals, and he probably will, to be fair, as well. So yeah, definitely really like this one. And what's so amazing about all of these kind of numbers that you're seeing on screen right now is this is pretty much without penalties as well. Watkins is also on penalties for Aston Villa, and he's putting up these numbers without penalties. So, you know, you compare him to the likes of Tony, for example, who obviously has really good underlying numbers as well at the moment, but Tony has kind of his numbers boosted, inflated a little bit by penalties. Watkins has not really got his numbers inflated by penalties, you know, too much, and over a very consistent period, we're looking at 8, 9, 10 games now, where he's pretty much getting an attacking return every single game, which is just mad. And Newcastle, I know they are a good defence, but they are conceding like the odd goal here and there. We have seen that, not conceding more than one, but, you know, if Aston Villa just score one goal, then, you know, it's going to be Ollie Watkins, isn't it? He's so involved with everything in attack for Aston Villa. So really don't see any reason to sell him. Like, even if he's your only route to Erling Haaland, I doubt he is. I'm sure there is another way you can get Erling Haaland into your team without selling Watkins. I would just hold Watkins because his form is just too good to resist. All right, this is where things get a little bit controversial because I am going to put De Bruyne as our first avoid, and this isn't even the controversial one, so, you know, hold your judgments. But yeah, De Bruyne, I'm going to put down as an avoid, and this is kind of an interesting avoid because it's not that I think De Bruyne is a bad pick necessarily, but I feel like De Bruyne is the ultimate opportunity cost troll, and I don't think people talk about opportunity cost enough in FPL. But what I basically mean by that is that if you buy De Bruyne, it pretty much locks you out of another premium player. And if we're looking at the best premium players right now, we are all, I'm imagining all of us, but certainly most of us are looking at ways to fit in Erling Haaland, Harry Kane, Mo Salah, possibly Bruno Fernandes as well there. And if you are trying to get all of those players in, how on earth are you going to get De Bruyne into your team as well? It's just not really possible. I don't think De Bruyne is 100% nailed really in this Man City team, particularly with these Champions League games coming up as well. We are going to see Alvarez play in De Bruyne's position occasionally. His numbers are, you know, he's obviously scored a goal, got a few assists in the last few games, which is amazing, but he is overperforming by quite a lot. In fact, he's doubling his expected numbers, which you could say that's because De Bruyne is amazing, but even the best players don't typically double their expected numbers, so that is definitely something to consider. Only taken 4 shots in the last 5 game weeks. That's not very good. Only 1 in the box. A lot of key passes really, but he is generating a decent amount of expected assists, but these numbers are just not quite good enough for me for 12.1 million, particularly when we compare them to the likes of Erling Haaland, when we compare them to Salah and Kane and this, that and the other. All of these other players are you know, really, really outperforming De Bruyne, and what's even more important is that we have Jack Grealish, who is significantly more, you know, cheaper. It's going to be a little bit more differential possibly as well, depending on what kind of rank you're at, and, you know, he's putting up better numbers, so I don't really see a reason to go for De Bruyne. If you're looking for that Man City midfielder, Grealish seems to be really obvious to me, and I think if you do go for De Bruyne, you're going to really miss out on some points from either Haaland, Kane or Salah, whoever it is out of those 3 players who I think are going to do really, really well between now and the end of the season. So opportunity cost, De Bruyne, you know, I appreciate he's a good player. If he was like 8 million or something like that and you weren't going to eat up so much of your budget with him, then I would kind of be a little bit more on board. But unfortunately, that is not the situation. De Bruyne is a little bit too expensive for what you get from him, and you are going to find yourself missing out on points elsewhere. And here's the big one. Tyrone Mings, I'm going to put down as an avoid. And I hope I can back this one up just a little bit, because I know Mings is by far the most popular defender that everyone is bringing in right now because he has got a lot of FPL points recently. But as always, I don't like to use past FPL points to predict future FPL points, or at least I don't like to use that as exclusively. I prefer a lot of other metrics. And what we've got on screen, guys, I hope is going to try to kind of explain what is going on here, why my brain is telling me avoid Tyrone Mings. Of course, if you don't already have him. If you already have Tyrone Mings, there's nothing wrong with keeping him, really. You're probably benching him a few of these game weeks, but, you know, that's fine. It's absolutely fine to keep him. All right, so first of all, let's state the obvious. The fixtures are not ideal. Newcastle at home. Newcastle have been scoring an insane amount of goals recently, so yeah, it's not ideal there. Brentford, again, another top attack at the moment. That's an away fixture. And we've got Manchester United in 34, another top attack. So what we have in this period of 4 games, and actually beyond that as well, Aston Villa only have really a couple of good fixtures for a defender, I guess, for between now and the end of the season. Other than that, we really are looking at Aston Villa facing the top defences in the league. You know, Newcastle, Brentford, Man United on form. These are all teams in the top sort of 6, 7 kind of best attacks in the league. So that is a real significant thing. Now, if we go back to the previous fixtures where Aston Villa have been conceding fewer goals, have been getting those clean sheets, they are playing the likes of Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth and Everton and Crystal Palace and these kind of teams who we know are the weakest attacks in the league. And of course, when you're playing against the weaker attacks in the league, you are going to get clean sheets. Hopefully, anyway. But here is the thing. Here is the big kicker. So if you look on screen, guys, obviously we have started to change stats that we're showing on screen for our defenders. So we've got, obviously, 1 goal involvement, 0.96 expected goal involvement. That's fantastic. But this is where things get interesting. Goals conceded, 2 for Aston Villa in the past 5 game weeks. Expected goals conceded 7.11. So despite the fact that they have played quite literally the worst attacks in the league, they have still managed to accumulate 7.11 expected goals conceded. And this is kind of, well, I guess this could be for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, Emi Martinez is the best goalkeeper who has ever lived on the planet by some distance. And he makes Casillas look like Ward or someone, something like that. And Martinez is absolutely insane in goal. You know, fair enough, he's a good goalkeeper, but I don't think he's quite this good to overperform his XGC for 5 goals, where we think he's going to do that consistently for the rest of his career. It's not really going to happen, is it? Or he's played against some pretty terrible attackers, and that has certainly been the case. Pretty weak attacks that they've played recently, and also just variance as well is always going to be a little bit of a thing. So yeah, in general, what I'm saying is, although Aston Villa look, if you just look at their points, they look like they're keeping clean sheets. They look like they are a very good defense at the moment. When we actually dig into the numbers and we actually look at the kind of games they've played, I think there have been some things that have been slightly misleading. And I know that's gonna probably not sit well with a lot of people, because I know a lot of people really just say, look, well, they kept the clean sheet, so it doesn't matter if they were expected to keep a clean sheet or not. They did, but all I can do here is kind of give my opinion, I guess, and share with you the way I play FPL and the way, you know, to be fair, has been shown to consistently work in FPL as a predictor of future points. And Mings is just unfortunately not it. But with all of that said, and I have said a lot there, I would love to hear some counter arguments, because I know a lot of you guys are going for Mings, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I know everything, you know, I'm always right. I'm not. Let's be honest. I'm not always right. I'm never going to get things 100% right all of the time. So yeah, definitely be interested to see the other side of the coin, why you guys are thinking about going for Mings, and maybe if you know, you disagree with some of the things that I have been saying in this short section, because I appreciate that this is a really controversial one. We're talking about one of the most popular buys of the game week, and I'm here saying they're an avoid, but to me, I just do not see these clean sheets being sustainable in some of these more difficult fixtures. You know, I like that Fulham game. Aside from that, I don't really like it. And we have seen in the past that Aston Villa do very well against the weaker attacks, defensively anyway. But when they come up against some stronger attacks, they can capitulate a little bit. They can fall in on themselves, and they can concede goals, and they can concede chances. So that's all I'm going to say on Mings, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that one. In summary, guys, whatever transfers you make this week are going to be, you know, hugely dependent on whether you're free hitting on game week 32. You guys know that already. We've spoken about it enough already. But one more thing that I do think is really important to mention, I really would wait until the midweek games are done. We've got a few big teams playing midweek, Champions League, European football in general, to be fair. So, yeah, I would wait and try and get injury updates on the likes of Luke Shaw and Marcus Rashford. At time of recording, we don't have those. So, hopefully we're going to get some of them by, you know, Thursday when Manchester United play, for example. We're going to see if there's any injuries to some other players maybe that is going to be impactful as well. Just, I would hold off if possible before making your transfers. Nothing wrong with thinking about it, making a plan, but just don't lock anything in quite yet, I think. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you did enjoy this one, please do leave a like. It really does help out the channel so much. Do subscribe if you are new around here as well. But aside from that, guys, I will see you tomorrow for our 100 experts video. And until then, I will see you later, mates. Bye-bye.